Hey, I'm Kiki, and if you don't already know how much I love Danny Phantom, it's nice to meet you. Danny Phantom has played a huge role in my life over the years. First as my favorite cartoon, then as the thing that got me into learning how to draw, then as my first successful video essay that led me to meet many of you. Back when it was just my favorite cartoon, I saved up my iTunes gift cards to buy the entire show. I didn't have cable after 2005, and therefore had to resort to my iPod video, the Nickelodeon website episode player, and the television in my mom's office conference room to watch the series. All of that has once again severely dated me. My iPod video had about 30 gigs of space, so I usually had to pick and choose what to store on there because I couldn't have the whole show and my music on it at once. And for some reason, though I'd bring a few favorite episodes from seasons 1 and 2 along with me, like Memory Blank, Flirting with Disaster, and Masters of All Time, I always had all the episodes of season 3 loaded up on that bad boy. Season 3 of Danny Phantom is often called the worst season of the show. People don't like the shift in the art style. People don't like the villain of the week format. People don't like the pacing of Danny and Sam getting together. And I get all that. I had plenty of critiques to lob at the series, and especially this season, during my first video on it a few years ago. And my biggest critique remains that Valerie Gray's story deserved much better than it got. But I also think that the season is largely overhated, and have always found a lot of enjoyment in watching these episodes despite their flaws. So today, I want to talk about how and why season 3 ended up this way, the two styles of episodes present in the season that conflict with each other, and the good that I find in it despite its issues. Ultimately, the material of seasons 2 and 3 served as a great jumping off point for the fantastic new graphic novel, A Glitch in Time by Gabriella Epstein. And if you haven't read it yet, this is a great way to catch up before you go pick up a copy. I've always believed the most special thing about Danny Phantom is the world building, which is so rich it's resulted in one of the most active and passionate fan bases of all time. The series' potential wasn't met, but the ghost of a fantastic serialization is there, and season 3 contributes plenty to that. So today, we're gonna dive into the final episodes of Danny Phantom and figure out what made them good. The first episode of season 3 is called Eye for an Eye. At the end of last season, Danny and his friends dealt with Vlad cloning him, Sam falling for a fuckboy, and Freakshow sending them on a cross-country summer adventure. Where we pick up to start the season, the gang is back in school again, and Vlad has moved into town. While there were several episodes in seasons 1 and 2 that proposed character growth and deeper storylines, continuity or calling back to previous episodes was basically non-existent. The exception that comes to mind is Memory Blank, where Sam gives Danny the logo on his costume, and that stays for the rest of the series. I like the logo, but I theorize that it was added for marketing reasons. When you look at the Ultimate Enemy or Reality Trip, it's quite a shame that themes like Dark Danny and his parents accepting his secret identity were never referenced again. Rather than serializing, the show had a roster of around 30 villains, and would pull one or a handful in to create a problem for Danny and his friends to solve. It made for episodes that were fun and easy to throw on without needing to know the entire context of the show. And this was very common in the era when cable TV was the primary way of consuming cartoons. But it also made it hard to gauge how much time had passed, and what character growth was occurring. Eye for an Eye is memorable for the series of escalating pranks that Vlad and Danny play on each other. But to me, it's memorable for permanently changing the status quo of the series. Vlad campaigns for mayor of Amity Park and manipulates his way to winning the office, vowing to make Danny's life a relentless nightmare. And so begins an escalating rivalry that explodes in Phantom Planet.
Whenever there's a draw, there's bound to be a rematch.
That shot goes hard as fuck, are you kidding me? It had me so hyped when I rewatched.
Coming April 2004, Nickelodeon's new action hero is going ghost.
I'm going ghost! I think I figured out what these powers are for. I hope I'm right!
Danny Phantom, a brand new Nicktoon series coming this April to Nickelodeon. Not seeing is believing.
That ghost is toast. More Danny Phantom next on Nick.
To me, it seems clear that the main problem with season 3 is that it didn't have enough time to tell its story. Normal season orders for the show were around 22 episodes, and it only got 13 due to cancellation. This is speculation on my part, but I think for a kids show in the 2000s attempting serialization, it was expected to still have some episodes that were a bit of a non sequitur. Gotta have easy open and shut 20-minute cases for syndication. However, these novelty episodes, as I'm dubbing them for this video, came at the expense of the greater story that the team was trying to tell. With such a limited amount of hours to tie up so many interesting loose threads, it was inevitable that something would get dropped. Losing the resolution of Dark Danny and Valerie's storylines is certainly a loss for the show, and I think that fuels a lot of the hate for these novelty episodes, because as episodes, they're actually pretty great. The episodes that I consider novelty are Girls' Night Out, Livin' Large, Boxed Up Fury, Frightmare, and Claw of the Wild. 4 out of 5 of these were written by one person, Kevin Sullivan, and I love the ways he played with the established world in each of them. All of his episodes are fun and memorable to me. Girls' Night Out highlights the fan-favorite female villains of the series and pits them against Sam, Maddie, and Jazz in a fun, gender-bending romp. Boxed Up Fury takes the box ghost, often the butt of jokes throughout the series, and makes him into a serious threat to the entire world when he opens Pandora's box. Frightmare gives us a peek into each of the main trio's psyche, has an absolutely gorgeous and super interesting villain design. I've always loved that his body is made of stars. And it also does a lot to push Danny and Sam's relationship forward, though it's not the focus of the episode. Claw of the Wild fulfills the obligatory Nickelodeon summer camp episode while playing with your expectations and giving us more Danny and Sam moments. It also has some of my favorite character art of the season. I think it does the blockier style better than the other episodes besides Phantom Planet. And while there are crumbs in each of these that inform the larger story, and Girls' Night Out and Frightmare are some of my favorites of the entire series, with the exception of the Danny and Sam scenes in Frightmare, I think you could take out all of these and it wouldn't affect season 3 at all. There is one episode that I think rides the line between novelty and informing the plot, and that's Forever Phantom. I'm happy to have Kuro the artist from the Ink Tank here to explain how and why it rides that line.
Hey folks, Kuro the artist here. I think the best part of Season 3 is playing with all of the established lore and characters from the previous 2 seasons. While it doesn't evolve the show in the same way as it has before, it still makes its own contributions to Danny Phantom's legacy that we can appreciate. And an episode I feel gets overlooked a lot is Forever Phantom. It's a fun episode about a new antagonist named Amorpho, who specializes in shapeshifting to look like anyone he sees. He's also proven to become those he's already mimicked, like a storage bank. This leads to a lot of what you'd expect. Humorous communication, awkward situations, but there's some good character stuff in there if you dig a little bit.
Would you look at this nonsense? Danny Phantom saves kids.
We're at the point in the series where Danny is seen as an actual superhero, and Amorpho, who's faceless, is jealous of the starstruck status Danny receives. So when Amorpho decides to impersonate Danny, he's forced to deal with all of that attention, and finds it's not what he thought it was. Danny's parents are hunting him down, and his fans in the media are incredibly overwhelming. Amorpho also impersonates Mr. Lancer for a bit in hopes to get the spotlight off of him, but now must also suffer the torment and disrespect Mr. Lancer receives from his students, and the damage impersonating Danny was already done. Amorpho can barely handle it for a few hours, which helps put into perspective how Danny probably feels about being Danny Phantom every day.
Looks like I picked the wrong person to impersonate. Everyone is after you.
You have no idea.
It brings a lot of clarity to Danny's constant frustration with his powers and responsibilities throughout the show, and why he's so willing to give them up a handful of times. A lot of Season 3's humor doesn't really land for me, but this episode had some solid jokes.
I'm him, the ghost who changed into you.
Really? Awesome!
Forever Phantom leans on the better side of Season 3 episodes for me, and while most folks forget about this one, I think it's worth a watch if you're trying to find some good in the show. Thanks for having me on, Kiki. I've got a handful of Danny Phantom videos on my own channel, along with a crossover continuation webcomic I've been working on for a few years that I'd love for y'all to check out sometime. But until then, keep it fizzy.
Thanks so much to Kuro for popping over here to chat about Danny Phantom. It's been a pleasure geeking out over my favorite cartoon with another superfan. If you want to hear us discuss this show in depth even more, we're also dropping a video on the Ink Tank this weekend covering the new graphic novel.
Who is the ultimate enemy? A Nickelodeon TV movie event, Danny Phantom, the ultimate enemy. Friday, September 16th at 8 p.m. To save the planet, one superhero must lose his powers.
Can you hear me?
Get them back again, kiss a girl, and team up with like a bazillion ghosts.
Look,
All in just 1 hour.
There's not a ghost anywhere that can stand up to Danny Phantom.
All specials are special, but some specials are just more special than others. Phantom Planet, the Danny Phantom special premieres this weekend at 10:30 and 4:30 on Nicktoons.
Hey, you know, Orbeez make eating fun. That's what they say in the ads. Peppered in amongst the novelty episodes are ones that follow Danny's growth and his relationships to his loved ones and enemies, and inform the events of the finale. Other than Eye for an Eye and Phantom Planet, the beginning and ending of the season, I consider these to be Infinite Realms, Torrent of Terror, Urban Jungle, and Destabilized. If you've ever done a deep dive on the crew of Danny Phantom, you know that Steve Marmol, Marty Eisenberg, and Sib Ventress are responsible for writing its best episodes. In fact, some combination of those three wrote all of seasons 1 and 2, with the exceptions of Mystery Meat, One of a Kind, and Splitting Images, which had involvement from Butch Hartman. That's right, he did storyboarding and directing more often, but when it came to writing his show, he did very little. And the show's best episodes, Memory Blank, Identity Crisis, The Ultimate Enemy, Flirting with Disaster, Masters of All Time, Reality Trip, those were all written by some configuration of Marmol, Eisenberg, and Ventress. But when advertising the episode Rainstorm from season 2 and pushing for marketing and toys that ultimately failed, Butch Hartman severely overspent the show's budget, forcing layoffs and an early cancellation of one of Nickelodeon's most promising series. This resulted in staffing changes for season 3, including the loss of those writers that had made such golden and memorable storylines happen. Marmol and Ventress wrote Eye for an Eye, and Ventress helped on Torrent of Terror. And that's it. The rest of these wannabe serialized episodes that attempted to carry the story forward were unfortunately majority written by Butch Hartman. Butch Hartman is a hack, and separate from his creative abilities, he is a bad person with bad opinions. His original vision for Danny Phantom was essentially a jumbled Ghost Rider ripoff, and without the mentioned staff's involvement, the show would not be the thing that we remember so dearly, the thing that he claims to have done all the good in. And you can see how disconnected he is from the best parts of Danny Phantom if you have the misfortune of watching the videos of his ideas for a continuation. So it pains me to try to find the good in the episodes where he took the reins. However, he wasn't the only storyboarder, and I see the vision for where they were trying to take season 3. There just wasn't enough time. After Eye for an Eye sets up the theme of the season, Vlad trying to make Danny's life a living hell, presumably due to his rage at his father stealing Maddie from him all those years ago, as we saw in Masters of All Time, and because Danny is regularly a snotty teenager in Vlad's direction and Vlad is a fucking psychopath, his harassment of Danny and his friends continues in Infinite Realms, when Danny, Sam, and Tucker are lent a device called the Infamap from the leader of an ice monster ghost race named Frostbite. What are they? Vlad has been looking for the Infamap for years, so he gets pissed and chases Danny and his friends through space-time, trying to retain power of the map. Then, faced with poor mayoral optics due to a drought in Torrent of Terror, Vlad takes control of an unwilling and incredibly destructive weather ghost named Vortex, who poses a very real threat of disturbing the entire world's ecosystems and destroying the planet unless Danny helps Vlad defeat him. This episode, though featuring, in my opinion, one of the series' most terrifying villains, is muddied by Danny also having weather powers halfway through the episode in a let's pretend this makes sense moment. Nevertheless, Danny Fenton and Phantom both help save the town in different ways. Following Torrent of Terror are the events of Forever Phantom, as Kuro explained earlier. We get a look at how hard it is to be Danny as his public image becomes more favorable, setting up a plot point for the finale. Then, very cool but random episode Urban Jungle happens, where Danny develops ice powers explained by his buddy Frostbite. This power always seemed kind of fanfiction-y to me, as it has absolutely no relation to any other ghost power he has, nor can he control any other elements. But for some reason, Butch really wanted him to have this. I don't know, dude. Plant Sam's designs are fucking awesome though, and Mark Hamill killed it as Undergrowth. Neither of these episodes really related to Vlad, but they showed some insight into how Danny was growing and changing, both as a hero in terms of his relationship to the public and his powers, and also in his relationship with Sam, as he shows deep care and concern for her as Urban Jungle comes to a close.
Building up inside him. And tomorrow, Danny Phantom's new power is finally unleashed.
But will it be enough to defeat a new enemy, save an overgrown world, and rescue his best friend?
Sam? Join us, Danny.
Phantom Freeze, a Danny Phantom TV event. Premiering tomorrow at 8. Only on Nick.
In an accident in his parents' lab, he was endowed with the powers of a ghost, so he can fly through walls, turn invisible, overshadow people's bodies, shoot energy blasts out of his hands. And he's not only going through his first year of high school as a freshman, he's also going through his first year of having his ghost powers.
I'm talking about my powers, my problems.
His best friends know his secret identity. Tucker, who's also 14. He's the wisecracker.
Always ready to fight.
And he's also kind of the tech geek. He has a lot of technical gadgets that he plays with. Sam is his female friend, his best friend, and she's a goth girl. And she's the Wednesday Addams of the show.
Why can't they accept me for who I am?
There's a character out there in the show that everybody can relate to.
The world premiere of Danny Phantom, April 3rd at 9:30, 8:30 Central, right after the Kids' Choice Awards. Not seeing is believing.
Those story episodes that I just mentioned are followed by 4 novelty episodes in a row. Then we get to Destabilized. This is perhaps the best piece of the story in Season 3, as it brings back Danielle and Valerie storylines from Season 2 and attempts to give them some degree of a resolution. Shout out to Amy Keating-Rogers. This was the only episode she wrote for the show, and it demonstrates an excellent understanding of the world and characters. I've rewatched this one so many times. Danny has to help Danielle stabilize her DNA so she doesn't disintegrate, and Vlad sends Valerie to hunt Danielle so he can use her DNA to make better Danny clones. He's obsessed. Up to this point, Valerie has been manipulated by Vlad, but here she finally learns the truth about him being an evil ghost, and works with Danny Phantom to save Danielle. I love this episode. It's just so heartbreaking that this was the last one before Phantom Planet. Phantom Planet is a tragic mess of a finale, and I'll make a full video breaking it down someday before I throw in the towel on this YouTube stuff. But unlike most fans who absolutely hate it and deny its existence, I find it tragic because it doesn't have enough time to devote to any of its ideas. They were at the end of their rope with too much material to wrap up in one neat 50-minute episode. The thing I want to focus on from Phantom Planet today is Danny's relationship to his identity. We'd seen him desire to shirk his responsibilities as Danny Phantom multiple times in the show. In Identity Crisis, when he split himself in half to have fun. And again in Livin' Large, when he used his family's temporary affluence as an excuse to stay home and do kid things, like playing video games and snacking all day. Any 16-year-old wouldn't be wrong to want a normal life when thrust into Danny's experiences. All things considered, he took an insane degree of responsibility on his shoulders from 14 years old. His family hunts his alter ego for fun, his city hates him though he constantly tries to keep them safe from ghosts, and he takes it on the chin while barely scraping by and being heavily bullied in school. When Master's blasters make Danny Phantom obsolete in Phantom Planet, after all he's been through up to that point, all the torment and relentless misery inflicted on him by Vlad, it just makes sense that Danny loses his sense of self and throws in the towel. It makes sense that he breaks down and just wants to be a normal kid. And it makes sense that his best friend in the world sees him losing his way and tries to bring him back to reality. I used to find this storyline of Danny getting rid of his powers cheap and random, but now I find it incredibly insightful and interesting to Danny's mental state and his relationships to those around him. I just wish it had been in its own episode, instead of shoehorned in before a save the world from imminent doom plot. Also, Danny and Sam are my favorite ship, and this kiss and their speeches to each other were iconic. Absolutely iconic. Between all the superhero tropes, goofy puns, and villains of the week, Danny Phantom has the propensity to be shockingly dark and psychological for a kid's cartoon. It's about a young boy who becomes a young man against his will and before he's ready. It's about accepting responsibility when no one else will. It's about protecting the people you love, shedding your fears, and becoming who you're meant to be. And even though it didn't do everything right, I don't think the show would have realized this as fully without Season 3. I'll always be grateful for Danny Phantom, flaws and highlights and missed potential and all. And I'll never let myself be embarrassed for loving it again, because the impact it left on my life changed my path forever. My entire journey and career as a creative designer began with learning how to draw that ghost boy when I was 10. And as Danny and Sam say to each other as the series comes to a close, I wouldn't change it for the world. Not one bit. If you need me, I'll be curled up on the couch, rocking my Danny Phantom pajama pants, rereading the graphic novel, and having the absolute best week with my inner child. Love you guys. Thanks for being here.
I am the queen of the universe.